Lost Dutchman's Gold Mine. According to legend, a rich gold mine is hidden in the southwestern United States. The location is generally believed to be in the Superstition Mountains, a collection of rough terrain that has gained the name of a single mountain. The contour of the region takes in thousands of cliffs, peaks, plateaus, and mesas, and even today most of it remains largely unexplored. It is located near Apache Junction, east of Phoenix, Arizona. There have been many stories about how to find the mine, and each year people search for the mine. Some have even died going on this search. The mine is named after a German immigrant, Jacob Waltz, in the mid to late 1800s, who proposedly discovered it in the 19th century and kept its location secret. He was actually from Germany and born there in the early 1800s. He came to America in 1845 and soon heard about the riches and adventure that were waiting in the frontier beyond New York. His first gold seeking took him to strike in North Carolina, and from there he traveled to Mississippi, California, and Nevada, always looking for his elusive fortune. Walls worked the gold field in the Sierra Nevada foothills for more than 10 years, never getting rich, but turning up enough gold to get along. By 1868, he was in his 50s and wondering if he was ever going to find his proverbial motherlode. The Indians had nicknamed him Snowbeard because of his long white whiskers, and it isn't hard to picture him as one of those grizzled old prospectors who were so common in Western films. The same year, Walls began homesteading in the Rio Centillo Valley, which is on the northern side of the Superstition Mountain. Soon after he arrived, he began to hear stories from the local Indians about supernatural doings around the mountain, about a fierce god, and about vast deposits of gold. Most stories about Jacob Walls say that he spent the next 20 years or so prospecting for gold around the Arizona territory. He often worked for wages in other men's mines while he searched for his own fortune. It was during one of these jobs that he met Jacob Weiser, most likely while he was working at the Vulture Mine in 1870. One version of this legend claims that Walls was fired from the mine for stealing gold, and soon the two Dutchmen struck out on their own and vanished into the land around the Superstition Mountain. Not long after, they were seen in Phoenix, playing for drinks and supplies with gold nuggets. Some claimed that this gold was the stolen loot from the Vulture Mine, while others said that it was much higher quality and had to have come from somewhere else. Regardless of where it came from, the two men would spend the gold around town for the next 2 decades. The Lost Dutchman's is perhaps the most famous lost mine in American history. Arizona place name expert Byard Gardner wrote, as of 1977, the Lost Dutchman's story has been printed or cited at least 6 times more often than 2 other fairly well-known tales: the story of Captain Kidd's lost treasure and the story of the lost Peg Leg Mine in California. People have been seeking the Lost Dutchman's mine since at least 1892. And according to one estimate, about 8,000 people annually made at least some effort to locate the Lost Dutchman's mine. Some argue that there is little to no evidence of this mine's existence, but others say that the main components of the story have at least some basis in fact. Thunderbird. The Thunderbird is a large bird-like creature, generally identified with the Thunderbird of Native American tradition. Thunderbirds are regarded by a small number of researchers as having lizard features, like the extinct Patasaurus, such as the Pteranodon. Reports of Thunderbird sightings go back centuries. There is a story that in April 1890, 2 cowboys in Arizona killed a giant bird-like creature with an enormous wingspan. It was said to have had smooth skin, featherless wings like a bat, and a face resembling an alligator. This description has some similarity to that of the prehistoric pterodactyl, an animal whose existence was known at the time. They are supposed to have dragged the carcass back to town, where it was pinned with wings outstretched across the entire length of a barn. A picture of this event may have been published in the local newspaper. According to Mark Hall, they did indeed print a story about the capture of a large, unusual winged creature on April 26, 1890. But beyond this single story, however, it is usually considered an urban legend, utterly fictional tall tales, were not an uncommon feature in the newspaper during this era. No one has ever produced a copy of the Thunderbird photograph, though numerous people, Ivan T. Sanderson being one of the better known, have made claims to its existence. Sanderson claimed to have owned a copy of the photo, which vanished after he loaned it to an acquaintance in the 1960s. The television program Freaky Leaks staged a similar photo, giving new life to the Thunderbird photo legend. The Muggy and Monster. A legendary creature that has been discussed in accounts from central and eastern Arizona along the Muggian Rim. It is most often described as a Bigfoot or ape-like creature, but descriptions vary. The Muggy and Monster is reported to be a bipedal humanoid that is well over 7 feet tall, with inhuman strength and large eyes that some claim to be wild and red. Its body is said to be covered with long black or reddish-brown hair, with the exclusions of the face, chest, hands, and feet. Many who encounter this beast report it having a strong and pungent odor described as that of dead fish, a skunk with bad body odor, or decaying pelt moss, and the musk of a snapping turtle. Stories say that the creature is nocturnal, omnivorous, very territorial, and sometimes very violent. It is generally reported to walk with wide inhuman strides, leaving behind footprints measuring 22 inches in length. It also likes to mimic birds, coyotes, and other wildlife, emit unusual whistling sounds, explore campsites after dark, builds nests out of pine needles, twigs, and leaves, sometimes hurling stones from locations that are hidden from view. The creature has also been said to decapitate deer and other wildlife prior to consumption. In numerous reports, the monster has been said to emit a blood-curdling scream, described as sounding like a woman in great distress. The oldest known documented sighting of the Muggy and Monster was reported in 1903 in an edition of the Arizona Republican, in which I.W. Stevens described a creature seen near the Grand Canyon as having long white and matted beard that reached his knees. It wore no clothing, and upon its talon-like fingers were claws at least 2 inches long. Upon further inspection, he noted a coat of gray hair nearly covered his body, with here and there a spot of dirty skin showing. He later stated that after he discovered the creature drinking the blood of 2 cougars, It threatened him with a club and screamed the wildest, most unearthly screech. Another early documented sighting was recounted by cryptozoologist Don Davis. During the mid-1940s, he was on a Boy Scout trip near Payson, Arizona, of which he gave the following account. The creature was huge. Its eyes were the deepest set and hard to see, but they seemed expressionless. His face pretty much devoid of hair, but there seemed to be hair along the sides of his face. His chest, shoulders, and arms were massive, especially the upper arms, easily upwards of 6 inches in diameter, perhaps much, much more. I could see he was pretty hairy, but didn't observe really how thick the body hair was. The face and head was very square sides and squared up chin like a box. A member of the White Mountain Apache Nation in Arizona by the name of Colette Alaha stated in 2006, "We're not prone to easily talk to outsiders, but there have been more sightings than ever. It cannot be ignored any longer." No one has had a negative encounter with it, said Margarine Grimes, who lives in White River, the primary town on the reservation. When asked about her encounter, she reports that it was all black and it was tall. The way it walked, it was taking big strides. I put on the brakes and raced back and looked between 2 trees where it was, and it was gone. Regarding local reports, Tribal Police Lieutenant Ray Burnett states that a couple of times they've seen a creature looking through the windows. They're scared when they call, he states. The calls we're getting from people. They weren't hallucinating, they weren't drunks, they weren't people that we know can make hoax calls. They're from real citizens of Fort Apache Indian Reservation. Skinwalkers. According to Navajo culture, a skinwalker is a type of harmful witch who has the ability to turn you into an animal or to disguise themselves as an animal, usually for the purposes of harming people. To become a skinwalker requires the most evil of deeds, the killing of a close family member. They literally become humans who have acquired immense supernatural power, including the ability to transform into animals and other people. According to the Navajo Skinwalker legend, these evil witches are typically seen in the form of a coyote, owl, fox, wolf, or crow, although they do have the ability to turn into any animal they choose. Because it is believed that skinwalkers wear the skin of the animals they transform into, it's considered taboo to wear a pelt of any animal. In fact, the Navajo are only known to wear 2 hides, sheepskin and buckskin, both of which are only used for ceremonial purposes. Those who have talked of their encounters with the evil beings describe a number of ways in which a skinwalker will try to inflict harm. Some describe hearing knocks on the window or banging on the walls. Others have spotted an animal-like figure peering in through a window. According to Navajo skinwalker legend, they are seldom caught. Those who do track a skinwalker and learn of their true identity must pronounce the name of the evil one in full. Once this happens, the skinwalker will get sick or die for all the wrong they have inflicted against others. Here is one person's experience. I was spending a month with my cousin at my grandma's house. It was August, and my cousin's age ranged from 10 to 15, and I was the oldest, being 15. I was staying with a 10, 13, and 14-year-old. We stayed up telling scary stories often, but the one night a few weeks in, we decided to make a campfire out back. My grandma's house is in the rural suburb. The neighbors aren't too far when you're driving down the road to her house, but in the backyard. It's a thick forest with man-made paths through it. Each house is on a hill, so only part of the basement was actually underground. That isn't important until later, though. So, we're towards the east side of her yard, in a smallish patch of open land. You couldn't see the neighbor's yard from there. And there was probably 3/4 mile to each side of us that belonged to my grandma. It was maybe 11 at night, and we were playing Truth or Dare after telling scary stories. And my 14-year-old cousin dared me and the 13-year-old to go walk through the paths for 10 minutes or so. I said yes right away. I wasn't easily scared, and rather level-headed. But my younger cousin was a bit more hesitant. We didn't bring a flashlight because it wasn't pitch dark yet, and we could see enough not to die. We were walking through the paths for about 5 minutes and could barely see the fire through the trees when we decided to turn. In the middle of the path was a large dog-like creature hunched over with its front hands an inch from the ground. What I remember most was how its eyes were so fucking bright white. And it was humanoid dog-shaped, with a human-like head but a dog-like body, with human hands and feet. It looked right at us, and I know I was paralyzed with fear as it dashed the opposite way from us, towards a creek that ran through the yard. Eventually, my cousin and I screamed bloody fucking murder, and the other cousins and my grandma ran to us. I don't remember much here because I was really disoriented and I couldn't think properly, but I did wake up in a bed, so I assume I was brought up to the house. All the kids slept in the basement, in a big room with sliding glass doors to the outside, as the room was on the side that wasn't underground. My bed was pressed against a big glass window, and I can see my cousins playing outside down below. The house gets slightly chilly, even in the end of August, and there was a slight breeze, so I put on a jacket and ran outside, skipping breakfast, not wanting to miss out on anything fun. When I got down, I could tell they weren't playing, but rather running to get my grandma. Her dogs, both of them, were dead. Ripped up. That night, we went to bed early. I woke up at maybe 2 a.m. because I felt something hit my head. My cousins were all sitting on the double bed opposite of me, on the other side of the room. There was 1 bunk bed and 2 double beds. The double beds for me and my 14-year-old cousin. They were being quiet and staring at me. The 13-year-old nodded his head towards the window. I froze. They all looked afraid. I turned my head slightly to the side, and I saw a really messed up looking face pressed to the window with gaping eyes looking down at me. I screamed so fucking loud and it bolted. My grandma called the police after I told her what happened, and they found nothing. I went home after that, and I've never been there during the night again. Aliens and UFOs. Arizona State consistently ranks among the top areas for reported UFO sightings. In fact, there have been more than 3,000 recorded sightings in Arizona since 1950. Here are just some of the major sightings that have happened. The Rhodes Disc Photos, 1947. On July 7, 1947, a 30-year-old Arizona man took one of the first and most famous photos of a flying saucer in the skies over Phoenix. It was about 4 in the afternoon when William Rhodes stepped out of his back door in Phoenix after a summer thunderstorm. The sounds of an approaching jet caught his attention, but when he looked to the sky, he saw nothing. Seconds later, an elliptical gray disk appeared, hovering slightly above the horizon towards the northeast. Rhodes later estimated it to be 20 to 30 feet in diameter, with a cockpit and a tail. The object hung about 5,000 feet above ground, before suddenly spiraling downward, dropping 2,000 feet in seconds. Rhodes ran inside, grabbed his camera, and got 2 shots of the disc flying upwards towards the clouds. The craft took off at speeds he estimated to be between 400 and 600 miles per hour, then disappeared over the western horizon. Rhodes told a local reporter in 1998 that after his photo was published in the Arizona Republic, a government agency asked to borrow the negative, but never brought it back. That is the very first picture of a cylinder-shaped UFO ever. That's really the significance behind the sighting, UFO hunter Jeff Wiles says. Plus, that was one of the first Arizona sightings to be captured on photograph. Dreamy Draw UFO Crash, 1947. In October 1947, a 36-foot spacecraft is said to have hurled itself into the sandstone mesa of the Dreamy Draw, a desert park next to Pisgah Peak, just south of Highway 51. Marana Air Base sighting, 1952. While waiting for a radio transmission from one of his students, a pilot instructor at the U.S. Air Force Base, northwest of Tucson, noticed a bright star in the morning sky at about 7:45 a.m. on April 3rd, 1952. The instructor didn't say anything about it, but soon 2 of his colleagues also pointed out the unusual mass hovering in place. About 45 minutes after the instructor noticed the UFO, it vanished. It was real bright and shone like polished aluminum. "I've been flying for 25 years and I have never seen anything like it," he said at the time. There were no military reports about balloons or other crafts in the vicinity. To this day, the incident remains unexplained. The Air Base sighting is among those listed in Project Blue Book, the Air Force infamous top-secret UFO study, which compiled 12,618 sightings across the nation from 1947 to 1969. The 130,000-page report was recently declassified and made public. Includes hundreds of reports of mysterious flying saucers and glowing spheres over Arizona. Travis Walton and the Fire in the Sky, 1975. On November 5th, 1975, while working with a logging crew, the 22-year-old Walton noticed a metallic golden disc hanging in the sky, 15 feet above a tangled pile of logs in a dense forest in northern Arizona near Snowflake. Walton approached the disc and began to wobble from side to side. Suddenly, a blue-green light emitted from the craft, striking Walton and lifting his body in the air. His terrified colleagues who witnessed the abduction drove off in pickup trucks. For 4 or 5 days, Walton was missing, spurring a nationally publicized manhunt. When he reappeared, naked and disoriented, he told a chilling tale of a spaceship and silent, big-eyed extraterrestrials. Walton claimed that when he regained consciousness aboard the craft, he found himself surrounded by squat, bald creatures. "I was looking squarely into the face of a horrible creature. It looked steadily back at me with huge, luminous brown eyes the size of quarters. He writes in Fire in the Sky, his book about the experience. I looked frantically around me. There were 3 more of them. He claimed to remember little else, as one of the creatures placed a helmet over his face and he blacked out. For years, Walton has been plagued by hostile investigators, an explosive press, and debunkers. In the 70s, there were several other abduction stories as Wiles. The Travis Walton case trumps the other cases because there were several witnesses who passed lie detector tests and saw him get beamed up into the UFO. Ghouls, I hope you enjoyed this video. I made it as long as I possibly could to make up for the other ones that were pretty short. So I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget, tomorrow, Saturday, is chill stream. So we're gonna be hella chill. Be ready for that big fucking mess. Secret word of the day. Tell me what kind of cereal is your favorite cereal. My favorite cereal is Honey Nut Cheerios. I'm lame, I know. But let me know in the comments what your favorite cereal is. But as always, ghouls, the last video is on the top left. The next video will be on the bottom left. All my social medias are on the screen as well as in the description box below. And remember, there's always someone or something watching you.